Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys what made me the most amount of money over the last 2 cycles and how to go about finding new narratives that are ultimately going to be able to make us financial fortunes. As we're just beginning this new cycle, we're in the part of the cycle where everybody that's buying now, finding new trends before they play out, are going to be the ones that make the majority of the profit given the full bull run. For today's video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what made me the most amount of money and how you guys can go about learning from this so you guys can ultimately do the same heading into this next bull run. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video. Now I don't really care to get into too much short-term analysis with Bitcoin. Really guys, we're either going to hold support right here or we're going to make one final dip to the mid-range point at around 28.1 before getting that reversal. This is what I am expecting with Bitcoin, and that's what I'm going to continue to stick to until something changes. But the big thing I want you guys to remember here, now that we're in the very beginning of this cycle, I want you guys to understand the perspective and go into a little bit of a detail on that. Now, the big thing I want you guys to remember here, I'm going to be breaking down what has made me the most money, different strategies that you guys can also kind of piggyback off of, and then really the most sound input that I can give you. I guess you could call it advice without, it being advice. But all I'm going to explain to you guys is really what's helped me make the most money, what helped me learn the most, and what mistakes that I do over the last couple cycles that I'm really trying to fix heading into this one. Now, first things first, guys, to understand where we're at, I think that the most prime thing to look at is obviously going to be the 4-year cycles, because this is the only way that we're going to be able to have an idea of where the heck we're at in the bigger scheme of things. Now, for the last 10 plus years, Bitcoin has followed these 4-year cycles, where at the end of the year, in the winter time, every 4 years, we get the bottom of the bear market and the completion of a cycle, right? And so we've done this literally every single one of our bear market bottoms, taking us all the way back to 2011. Every single time, November, end of the year, bear market bottom. January, end of the year, bear market bottom. December, end of the year, bear market bottom. And once again, November, bear market bottom. So we have a very obvious and clear pattern that is played out each and every one of our cycles. This is how we understand where we're at in the grand scheme of things. Now guys, what we need to understand here is whenever we have the bottom of a 4-year cycle, it not only completes the prior 4-year cycle, but it has the potential to start a new one, right? So keep in mind, right here to here, this was our first 4-year cycle. And then if you notice that the bottom and the completion of this first 4-year cycle was also the beginning of our second 4-year cycle, right? And then where our second 4-year cycle ends, we have the beginning of the third. And now where this third one ends, we have the beginning of the fourth, right? So I hope that that's not too confusing for you guys. The point that I'm trying to get at here is we just started a brand new 4-year cycle. And so with that being said, guys, it's very important that we understand how early we still are, because the majority of our bull run is still just waiting to happen. At the very beginning of the cycle, we always make our very first breakout. This could be the first set of higher highs. It could be one big higher high like what we saw over here in 2019. But regardless, the way every single bull run starts is the beginning of a new uptrend. So in all of our last bear markets, we have descending resistance. The second that this is broken, we start ascending support, right? Higher highs and higher lows. And then that's what ultimately leads us into these blow-off tops and these massive cycles. But everything has kind of been the same up to this point. This cycle, the leading of it in the beginning, leading into new all-time highs, was very similar to the 2017 cycle. Really 2016, because that's what all of this time was right here. But then even when we come over here to 2019, we saw something similar. The only difference here was we had the COVID black swan, which ultimately caused, this lower low and deviation from this main trend. But up to this point, if we look at every single one of the beginnings of our new bull runs, we see the exact same turn of events, where we have a descending resistance. Once price breaks out of that descending resistance, we start ascending support. And then this is what leads us into these blow-off tops. And up to this point, every one of our cycles has been very much the same. They haven't really been that much different. And so now when it comes to us looking at this current cycle, all of the same events are playing in once again. We have the end of the year, bottom of the 4-year cycle, end of the year, bottom of the 4-year cycle, all the way through, right? We already have talked about that. But now, on top of that, if we come over here and look at the same kind of rules that we've been accustomed to seeing, we've already broken out of our descending resistance, right? If we come in here, we can see that Bitcoin had a year-long bear market. Once we bottomed at the end of the year and completed our 4-year cycle, we started a new one, and then we broke out of that descending resistance, right? And so every single time that Bitcoin has broken out of descending resistance after a bear market, it has created a bull run. And this has been the case every single time that this has ever happened. And so there's a lot of similarities that are in this cycle, comparing it to the last cycles. And so at this point, if you're seeing Bitcoin breaking out once again as we're sitting, right around 30K, there should be no reason or doubt in your mind that this isn't a full-blown blow cycle. There should be no more doubt in your mind that, we're still bearish, that there's, cause for concern of going to new lows. At this point, everything has been confirmed that we are bullish. Now, guys, understanding all of this, we got our breakout from the descending resistance. Now, more or less comes the time where we're going to start some type of ascending support. Now, this is what I find really interesting about this cycle. Now, because of the way that we've already developed, we're kind of creating one in a way, right? Let's make this one green so you guys can tell. We've kind of created an ascending support up to this point. But to be honest, I'm not really factoring in this being a major ascending support until we have a longer term correction, right? Now what I mean by that, if we come back and look at our last cycles, we can see that in 2011, our breakouts were just these quick impulses, these couple month of corrections just going sideways, but they were higher highs and higher lows off of this ascending support, right? But every one of our impulses were really quick, the pullbacks were about the same, and it was consistent. Even in 2017, it was about the same. Quick impulses, consistent growth on the ascending support, quick impulses, but overall, we're just pretty much hugging this ascending support. And even in 2019, it was the same, not factoring in the pandemic black swan. Now, when we're in this current cycle, nothing is really that far different. But the thing that I want you guys to remember is the thing I've always been watching for in this current setup is the potential where this runs up to 50K, 48.5 technically. That would be our 618, and that would be the top of our first lower high of the bear market. I believe that that is where Bitcoin is headed. We are going to be seeing Bitcoin rallying upwards of 50K before this first impulse is done. Now, this is where things get tricky, guys. Once this impulse ends, this will be the completion of our very first impulse of the new cycle. Now, because I think it's going to go upwards of 50K, I do believe that we're going to see something similar like what we saw in 2019, where once we ended up peaking, we spent over 400 days before we ever got to the point of breaking back out of that high. Is it going to take 400 days? I don't know for certain, but I want you guys to understand that the bigger the move to the upside, the lengthier of time worth of reaccumulation and a bearish correction to the downside that we're going to have to go through. So if you notice here, in all of our last cycle in 2017 or 2016, for example, we had this quick impulse, but all of these impulses, this one, for example, on the Fibonacci, it didn't go nearly all the way to the 618. We went just between basically we went to the 236, right? And that's what we saw there. Now, what we saw was quick impulses, and then instantly we would be pulling back onto this ascending support. Same thing here. Quick impulse, instantly came back down to ascending support. So it was much more consistent. The impulses were shorter, the corrections were a little shorter and consistent. In 2019, we only spent 3 months right here, and then we teleported straight to the 618. So it was a much, much greater and quicker impulse than we had ever seen to begin a new cycle. Thus, we saw basically 500 days worth of a correction before we ended up making a new high again. Because this cycle is already played out similar, I believe that if Bitcoin runs up to 50K, we will see a lengthier period of consolidation. And then that is where we're going to be able to determine where our ascending support is, right? Now, if we follow this normal route that we've kind of been on, maybe we see a run up to 50K, and then we kind of correct here before we come back down to this level, and we do something like that. Who knows exactly? But to me, if we're going to run up to 50K, I personally think that this short-term ascending support would fail. I think that we'd probably go like this, run up to 50K, correct back down. We'd probably correct and bounce off of this for a second, but then that would actually fail. We would see something like this, where it would be a lower high, and then this would take us to a lower low and probably back down to around 25K. And that's kind of what I'm personally going to be expecting with this move. I think that, for the next couple months, we're going to have an amazing opportunity of buying a lot of altcoins, accumulating a lot of crypto for the long term, whether that's NFTs, whether that's tokens themselves. Regardless, I think that we're going to have a nice opportunity of making some good profit, especially when Bitcoin blows off top, especially when Bitcoin does a blow off top at 50K. It'll be very similar to the run at 29. It'll be very similar to the run in 2019, and I do believe that it will play out kind of similarly. Where if we notice here, guys, notice how we kind of had this ascending support right here. We bounced, went and deviated way above it, and then we spent all of this time correcting before we retested it here at about 6 to 7K. And then this is where we bounced. We broke out of our descending resistance here, and everybody, including myself, thought that this was the reversal. Bitcoin was going to just go like that, right? Obviously, that wasn't the case, and we had this COVID black swan. But what we saw here was a reversion back down to this mean trend before we ultimately sold back below it. Now, I don't believe that we're going to see another COVID black swan, but this would actually line up very accordingly, where we do this blow off top, we correct back down to this ascending support. I believe a lot of people are going to expect it to hold, and then that's where we actually see one more final low, back down to basically 25K, and then that should theoretically be our new support given in the new trend line. And that's kind of the way I'm personally factoring in what I'm seeing with Bitcoin and what I think is going to be playing out from here. We've got all of our confirmation for higher highs and higher lows. You guys have known I've been talking about the same analysis for months and months and months. I've constantly said that we would be going upwards of 40 and 50K if we were finally able to get a flip above 25. We got that flip. Now all we have left to do is just run to 25 or run to 50K. So I'm going to keep you guys updated. Regardless, this is the thing that we need to be factoring in. Now, this is the best way to make money, is understanding the 4-year cycles. Because if you understand them, you're going to get the best opportunity of knowing when to get in and when to get out of the market. And so that's why I give you guys this first off. Understanding the 4-year cycles is the most key form of analysis, key part of my trading plan that is going to help you know when to get in and out of the market. Now, guys, let's talk about other things. Now, some of the other things that we need to factor in here come in the form of altcoins, right? Now, altcoins themselves are doing something very interesting. And one of the big reasons why I believe this cycle is setting up to be much greater than prior cycles is because this cycle itself is going to be much greater for altcoins as a whole. Now, what we saw in the last cycle was almost like a build-up phase. We saw a lot of adoption, PayPal, and now we've had even more adoption, arguably, in the last couple months. But in the last cycle, we had DeFi for the first time. We had NFTs, GameFi, Metaverse, a lot of big things that were going to be an on-ramp for the average retail investor to come on. We started to see those. And then we saw big corporations, different banks, and different things add support for crypto in a much bigger way than we had ever seen, right? And so with all that being said, with this next cycle, the current cycle that we're in, I think that the best thing that we can do is factor in narratives going into this next bull run. The way that I made the most amount of money in the last cycle was, honestly, I was mainly in TA, right? I always was the guy who was like, well, you don't need fundamental analysis. That's just going to, mess things up for your trading plan. I made specific investments. I bought, it was Decentraland early on in 2020. That one did over 100x. I bought Cardano back in 2019. That one did over 100x. But these were little things that, for me, the only real narrative I was focused on was layer ones. I figured that those would do good. And then the only other narrative from there was like maybe Metaverse, I guess. But I really wasn't factoring in too much narratives. I wasn't focused on that. I was more focused on what the charts looked like. And that was actually the reason I bought all of those. Those altcoins ended up doing and outperforming, over 100x because of narratives attached to them. Now, in this cycle, I think that this is going to be a very big thing to factor in here. What are the narratives that are going to be creating the most amount of money? Because I had a lot of money in the last cycle, but I put a lot of that money, over 80%, in, top altcoins, like high market cap stuff, because I thought that that was safer. And by doing that, I ended up missing out on a ton of money. I saw people with 10% of my portfolio out-earn me left and right just because of the fact they were early to trends before they played out. And that's why I want you guys to understand that if you're here right now, you are early to the cycle. We just began the new 4-year cycle. We haven't even finished the first impulse yet. So if you're looking at this was the first impulse. This is how high we went. This was the first impulse. This is how high we went. 2019 had a much bigger first impulse, but we still had a pretty massive breakout after that. So every one of these cycles, we're looking at relatively the same things. Even if we don't go quite as high as 2017, by being where we're at right now, we are setting ourselves up to make the majority of that money when it happens. And I do believe this cycle will be more profitable than the last one. The last one was pretty lackluster in comparison. Now, when we're talking about this, how do we make the most money possible? Well, that comes down to narratives. Now, one of the most popular narratives that you're going to find is the layer 1 narrative, and that is really around, Ethereum, centered around that, basically being a crypto where all other cryptos can be built from, right? It's kind of like an entire centralized hub. Decentralized hub would be a better way of looking at that. But layer 1s are just a way for cryptos to build inside of a network. So the native network is obviously going to see the biggest benefit of that. So layer 1s are still going to be a factor into the cycle, even though we're kind of, past all of these for a little while. Ethereum's been around for a long time. We have tons of layer 1s now. It's still something to keep in note of. We're still going to see a lot of them blow up. Injective protocol is a big one that we've seen take off a lot. That one's perfectly following into that layer 1 narrative. Now, another narrative that we like to watch is layer 2s. This is where Arbitrum comes into play, optimism. Some of these layer 2s, their entire solution is ultimately bridging. I mean, technically they're not bridging so much, but they're looking to basically get the fees out of ETH and onto a different network. And that's supposed to ultimately mitigate a lot of the gas fees. We're seeing a lot of those blow up just because we know what happens with ETH. It gets very expensive to send transactions. The gas goes up a lot. So layer 2s are a huge narrative that you want to be paying attention to because this is where we're seeing a lot of new money going. There's a reason Arbitrum is so big. There's a reason I'm so heavily invested into it. And it's because it's one of the premier leaders of the layer 2 movement. Now, on top of layer 2s, you have layer 3s, and those can kind of be a mix of different things. But then on top of that, you have GameFi. Look at gaming projects. Different gaming projects that have investors already, that have big investors, stuff that are actually creating working products that we can use. What are really like the highest functional projects? What type of gaming projects are going to be the leaders out there? It's not hard to tell with a little bit of research. Don't gamble. Look for the ones that already have working projects. But I mean, GameFi is going to be a huge thing. I believe that Metaverse kind of factors in with that, one and the same. And then, you have DeFi, obviously. These are all huge, huge, huge narratives that are going to play out in a big way. And it's important that while we're at the beginning of this cycle, if you're investing, if you're finding these narratives now, what are the leaders in all of these different niches? If you find those and buy them, you might have to hold on to a negative 50% loss, maybe negative 90%, who knows? You might have to hold on to a loss. I will tell you guys right now that in the bear market of our last cycle, ETH didn't really do a whole lot. It sat inside of this range and consolidated between support and resistance for basically 2 years. And it didn't really do anything until all of a sudden, one day out of the blue, it started blowing up. This is the way momentum works inside of crypto. You have to be willing to stomach a short-term loss, even if that short-term loss means you holding for over a year. Sometimes that's the way it goes with markets. And I can tell you guys from personal experience, the altcoins that I bought that did over 100x, I was down over 50% for a good period of time in those as well. So you're not going to make 100x if you're going to be willing to hold throughout the bulk of these moves. And with us being at the beginning of the new cycle, this is really where a lot of volatility is going to come into play. We don't know what altcoins are going to do. I do believe that we could see altcoins run upwards, Ethereum going to 3,500, Bitcoin going to 50K. And if that happens, we will see a ton of profit in the altcoins. But understand that if ETH runs up here and goes all the way up to 35K, we're going to see a longer term correction. And this thing could really do something like this. And if you're not willing to hold all the way back into 2024, or you weren't willing to hold through the highs and the lows, when this type of a move happens, once we really go into price discovery, that's where it all makes sense. That's where all of the patience, all of the dedication, all of the research, that is where it matters most. And so guys, I said this inside of my Discord this morning. I said that the people that make the most money over this cycle are going to be the ones that aren't doing TA. They're going to be the ones that are focusing on research and fundamental analysis, which might come off as weird considering I do TA every day. But this is now my 7th year in crypto. This is now my 3rd cycle. And with everything that I've learned inside of crypto, the most profitable people are ones that find narratives before they play out. And then once the bull market plays out, whenever narratives start popping up, whichever those are, you might buy stuff that won't ever move or, you lose money on. And that's a given. You should, more or less count on that. But nailing just one small investment in the right niche could quite literally take you from 0 to 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures. You don't really know. And that's why I want you guys to understand, with this being in the early part of the cycle, research. I wouldn't spend so much time learning technical analysis. I don't think it really matters that much. I'm really grateful that I know as much as I do and I have spent so much time doing it. But for me, the way you're going to make more money is by literally researching. Now, I think TA comes into the fact when we're looking at the 4-year cycles. I think this is all you need to understand for crypto. Understand the 4-year cycles. That's the only TA you need. If you understand the 4-year cycles, you know when to get in and when to get out, which is all that really matters there. Once you understand the time frame for buying and selling, when you're going to be in and when you're going to be out, everything else is easy, because all that you have to do from this point on, you understand that the end of the year 2025 is our projected cycle top, right? And so with that being said, if that's our projected cycle top, we've got 2.5 years before that happens. Right now, you don't need to be learning TA if you already understand the blueprint for where we're going and where we're going to stop. If you already understand the blueprint, don't overcomplicate things, because I can guarantee you're just going to cost yourself more money. You're not going to be a TA wizard in the 2 years it's going to take for this bull run to finish. I promise you, it's just not realistic. Chances are, by trying to become a TA wizard, you'll end up costing what profit you do make inside of this, and then you'll be pissed off in the bear market thinking, man, why did I do that? I could have just bought and hold. So I tell you guys all of this stuff. Right now, key factor, 4-year cycle, key factor number 2, research. Look into these narratives I just gave you. Research narratives. Look on Twitter. Join some Telegram groups. It's not hard. All of this information is free, guys. I get all my stuff from Twitter and Telegram at this point. So it's all out there for anybody to see. But if you research into these, and if you position yourselves early, and you have the patience to hold through the ups and downs before the real hype of the market sets in, I am willing to bet almost any amount of money that you guys will nail some of those. It's just a matter of time, but you got to genuinely do research. You got to be honest with yourself, and you got to humble yourself most importantly. Nobody's a genius. You're going to miss some of these. You're going to watch many 100x plus go on without you. It's just part of the game. As long as we have our sets focused on the macro and we have a plan in place, in my opinion, that's all that really matters. So I wanted to give you guys this video. If you find value in this, leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you guys want to join the Discord or download my free ebook, links are in the description for that. If you guys would like to follow my trades, anything that I'm buying right now, I've been posting some new signals here as we're getting ready for this next impulse. So if you guys do want to see how I'm investing, I've got a lot of narratives that I've already been researching. In the last cycle, I wasn't looking into narratives because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And it's as simple as that. This cycle, I do know what I didn't know in the last one. And so I have focused solely on finding these good narratives. And so if you guys want to be able to follow that, the only way to genuinely know what the heck I'm doing on this channel is to follow my Discord server, because on this channel I cover a lot of market movements. I like to do TA, I like to cover indices and things like that. But if you guys want to see specifics for how I'm trading, where I'm invested, how much, and all of those details, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Lifetime access, and you guys are always going to be able to have it as long as I'm trading any market. It doesn't matter if it's crypto, stocks, anything. You guys are going to be able to see that. So thank you all so much for the support. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.